Hi there, I'm Des.
And I'm Tim, and together Des and I head up the men's ministry Momentum Australia.
Momentum has multiple functions, but primarily our aim is to help men to succeed in life, to do life better.
We run a weekly radio show that goes all around Australia where we talk about anything and everything that relates to men.
And we encourage men to do life in community, to do life with other men where we can be accountable, we can be welcome, we can be open and honest about what's happening in our world.
We'd love you to have a look around our website. That's momentumaustralia.org. There you'll find a bunch of resources to help you on your journey and all of our previous episodes and topics.
We thank you for your interest in Momentum Australia, and we hope you enjoyed this video today.
All right, well, it is Momentum, and welcome to the show wherever you are around Australia. Really, really great to have you tuning in. Really appreciate that. And, we exist to help you do life a bit better. And you can get some great tools and resources online at our website, momentumaustralia.org. That's momentumaustralia.org. And, of course, I am not doing this solo. My good friend, partner, and awesome co-host, Des Kennedy, is with us once again this week. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, man. I love being talked up. You can do that anytime you want.
Just keep the money coming.
It's good to do the shows, man. We have also a new support line, which is amazing, and that's the Momentum CARELINE 1-800-000-MEN. That's 636. The service is provided by our friends at CARELINE Connections. You can reach out and get help 7 days a week, 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. 1-800-000-MEN. That's 636. Last week we had an amazing discussion with Rob Hoyle from Parents Beyond Breakup, who are a support group for mainly men, I guess, from our point of view, but also for women who are going through relationship breakdown and separation. And we all know of somebody who's gone through the trauma, the pain, the anxiety, the depression, whatever it is around separation and how it eventuates. And, whenever I went through it many years ago, there was nothing. There was nobody I could talk to. There was no information I could get that helped me establish what I needed for me as a dad and as an ex-husband, going through that whole trauma. But we've got Rob with us today. So welcome, Rob.
Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me back.
Yeah, no, you're most welcome.
Rob, before we go any further, we'll point people to the website again. That's parentsbeyondbreakup.com, and they have their own helpline too. Jot this number down, 1300-853-437. That's 1300-853-437 and parentsbeyondbreakup.com. And we did say last week at the end of the show, if you go to the website, you'll see in one of the drop downs, they have a separation checklist. And this is just some stuff that parents can go through, really help them just to navigate the tricky and tense waters at times when things perhaps haven't gone according to plan. So, Rob, we're going to have a look at the checklist this week. I mean, it's fairly straightforward, but I mean, as Des said, we've all on this call gone through a marriage breakdown, sadly. And I don't know about you guys, but yes, we've probably done it alone for the most part and not had someone come alongside us or certainly a checklist to go through to go, this is keeping me on track and helping me through this process. So we just want to say up front from Momentum, we think this is an incredible resource for everybody listening now who's going through this. So let's have a look at the separation checklist. I suppose the first thing is, before we go into it, the setup, the idea of where did this actually come from? Because it's such a brilliant idea, just simple yet practical.
Well, it is a practical response to the problem you get presented with week by week. You've got guys presenting in trauma, at the very least, highly stressed, and you need to come up with some points to help them navigate from their current position of generally hopelessness into a position of hope. And that is, when you cut it down to the bare roots, they're in a state of stress and hopelessness. So to give them a pathway out is the obvious approach. So this has been developed over, I would say, the 23 years that Dads in Distress and Parents Beyond Breakup have been operating. So it has been contributed by not just one individual, but by many. So it's really a person-specific plan or approach. You can look at a lot of separation checklists online, and they're very legally focused. And this is person focused.
And what I love about this one is that it is geared to the individual. It's about bringing that person through their journey in a much better way. And the first one, the very first point you talk about in the checklist is there's hope. Talk about that.
That's my favorite subject.
Yeah.
When I was doing my master's degree, it was during the time of COVID, and every subject was about trauma. And I privately started looking at the theology of hope and what really is involved in hope. And I come from a business background, and I always thought hope was just what you do when you buy a lotto ticket. Business was about planning. It was not about luck. It was about not hoping that something would come off. It was doing stuff to make sure it came off. So hope was a concept that was not very much in my mind. So when I started going through the turmoil in my life, hope was actually a discovery.
Yeah.
That there was hope for a better future. And in some cases, for those who believe in the Lord, there's, the ultimate hope is in the Lord through faith. So hope is instrumental in a lot of things that I do with my groups. Not saying every group does it that way, but yeah, hope for a better future is really important.
I think we can lose a lot of things in life, right? But I think when you lose hope, that's the toughest part to be, right? When you lose hope that things are going to improve or get better, or that there is a hope of a better tomorrow or whatever, we can deal with a lot as humans and as people and as dads and men. But I think when you reach a point of hopelessness, then we're on a really slippery slope. Is that a fair call?
Awesome. Yeah. And it's hard work. That's not an automatic switch to get hope. You've got to work at it. And it's a day in, day out task. And what I do, there's an analogy that I tell the dads, and it's, I'm a water person. So, surf and sailing and swimming and all sorts of things. And I liken it to swimming a really, really broad river, and you're thrown in on one bank and you're told you've got to swim that river, and on the other side, you'll get out and you'll be okay. But swimming, it's a river that's so broad you can't even see the other side. So that's the journey that these guys sometimes are facing. They don't know when it's going to finish, but they've got to condition themselves to get up every day and do the next thing, which is get out of bed and swim for that day. And along the way, you're going to get tired. So you need to put up your hand and get some help from somebody. And there's always somebody out there that will help in all sorts of ways, from professional to just having an ear to listen to. And then I say that ultimately you'll see the other side, and you'll pull yourself out, start toweling off, and you'll think, my goodness, that was a river I just swam. It was a mighty river, and I've got here. I'm okay. And then the really great thing is that almost invariably at the end of the process of sorting all this mess out through separation, the guys find themselves in new territory on the other side of the bank, and it's always better than when on the other side of the bank. So they've learned to experience what they don't want to get involved with again. And they also know the worst of what can happen with potential partners. And invariably they make a better choice, not always, Des, but the second time around, and they enjoy happiness.
Yeah. One of the things that I noticed on your website where it's talking about there's hope, there's some clear messages that I would love to read. The first one is, stay calm, do not panic, and don't overreact. So often as men, we blow a valve. We just, wanted that frustration to get out, and we let it out at our ex-partner, for example, and it destroys, any sort of relationship that you may have had. So that's the first thing that's really good. The second thing is that you got to breathe, take time, and assess carefully your next step. And that's a great piece of advice to men. You may think it's urgent, but just take time and think about it. That's a real good rule for life in itself. But for guys who are going through this, that's really so cool. Yeah.
The average duration of this separation turmoil, 3-4 years. And in some circumstances, I've got guys that separated 12 years ago.
Wow.
Still going through trauma.
Wow.
So sometimes that river is pretty broad.
Yeah. I love that we've started there and we're lingering on that because, again, it is important. Rob, can I ask then there's the points that you raised there were terrific. But Rob, from a practical point of view for guys listening right now, and they feel pretty hopeless, right? What can some practical, simple things that they can do right now to start feeling encouraged and like there is some hope again in their lives?
Well, as I mentioned last week, one of the key things is to gain your own physical health again. So often when you get depressed, exercising is the first thing that suffers. So get your blood flowing, get your mind free, do something that you enjoy doing. That'll create so much more space in your mind to handle the stress of the situation that you find yourself in. And then the other most logical step is to get help. And the help can come from any number of directions. I mentioned last week a doctor. The doctor can then be a channel to get to a psychologist or a counsellor. Support groups like we offer. Doing it alone is possible, but not very happy.
Not preferable.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the good things, Rob, is that people can go through this situation and end up with a positive outcome. They're not all negative. They're not all life destroying. If you handle it right, you handle it slowly, methodically, you don't lose your temper that gets your ex-partner offside. but you're gracious and so forth, you can get a really successful outcome.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
I've had examples of that, the guys that have come through the whole process and they're enjoying life, and it's a better life than they had before.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
One thing I find interesting in the checklist, and I'm going to skip down a couple, and then we can come back at the second part of the show and maybe talk about some of the others, but start keeping a daily diary/journal, which is something I've done for many years, not something that traditionally men do. But Rob, tell us about the importance and the benefits of doing this, particularly for dads going through a separation.
Well, I think there's two obvious benefits. Writing down your thoughts and feelings are an excellent way to understand and own those feelings. So putting it down in writing, you can actually put your brain around what you're actually thinking and what the key elements are. And the second one is probably more of a legal issue, is that over a period of time of 2 or 3 years, you forget which month events happened in. So keeping that is really important for, well, the unfortunate realities if it gets to a court case, or even if it's a mediation. Some of those jog points in terms of when things happen are really important.
Yeah, and sitting on top of that, I would imagine that as you get to the end of the process, you can look back at where you were and how you were feeling and the depression and the anxiety and so forth in your world. And you look at yourself now coming out the other end, you say, wow, I've actually got through this. How blessed am I to be able to get through this other side? I still have a life. I still have my relationship with my kids or whatever it is. You've got something to make that comparison, which is amazingly powerful.
Actually, one of the tools that we've developed in the groups, and it's actually to write a letter. It's to write a letter to the ex and to think that that's going to be 3 letters. One is the first one to try and break the ice and get communications happening.
Yeah.
And a lot of the guys will say, and quite rightly, they don't get a response. And we say, doesn't matter. You've communicated and you've communicated in a very, very positive way. And you jot that down in your journal that I sent this letter and it was a really friendly, open and honest attempt to get communications happening. And, 9 times out of 10, the guys are right. They won't get a response. Then they write another letter and put down their next set, which is somewhat disappointed the fact that they didn't get a response to their first letter. And then by the time they don't get any responses to those first 2, the third one is, unfortunately, we've got to go to court or we've got to go to mediation or we've got to do something positive about this because we're getting nowhere. But they have essentially a record of their integrity and their honesty to try and get things happening, which becomes an excellent tool. Either it achieves what it's set out to do, or it becomes an exhibit in a discussion with a mediator or in the front of a court. So putting things down is very, very valuable.
Rob, do you help guys with those sorts of letters and the wording of that? Because, that's a tricky space to sit in. We want to word it well so that obviously then it can't be used against us if it's not worded terribly well, or we say things in there that could defame or set us up for a fall or be used against us. Do you help guys in that space so that they can write a well-worded letter?
I would tend to not want to do that. I'd rather it come from them in their own approach. But the really interesting thing is that most guys have a woman in their life after separation. And in some cases, that woman is a brilliant sounding board. And so together they write the letter.
Right.
And so then they have a third party that is like the target market, a woman that understands how women thinks, writes the actual letter, which is better than a guy going in guy language.
I'm not sure where that goes. I really don't know where that goes. One of the things that you talk about, and we have to talk about this too, and that is that it's quite easy for there to be false accusations made from both sides. And, clearly that is about control. It's also about getting the upper hand in discussions. Talk to us about how you can overcome that.
The simple answer is you really can't overcome that in the short term. Perjury is what it is. The court recognizes it is perjury, and the court doesn't like perjury whatsoever. And feedback from high-level judges indicates that those that are involved in perjury and false allegations ultimately get found out. That doesn't help in the process. No. It hurts.
Yeah.
But it's more a matter of being... I tell my guys to act as a man of integrity. What would a man of integrity do in this situation? And that's not lash out, that's not retaliate, that's not create counterclaims. It's to actually say they're false and move on.
Yeah,
it's good.
They're false to whom? To the partner or to those that you're talking to?
Well, generally the response is back to the partner.
Yeah,
it can be in case it could be the law. Sorry, it could be the court, or it could be a mediator. But seriously, they find out that they're on a slippery slope, and they treat them with disdain. In fact, in the UK, it's now a criminal offence in the family law court to perjure yourself, and there's pretty strict implications.
Of course, one of the trickiest things, particularly as a parent, is the effect that this can have on our kid. Rob, let's speak into that space. The best interests of the child or children, how can we as parents try and protect our kids from the fallout of a separation as best we can?
Sadly, the reality is that a lot of dads are put in a position where their access to their children is either by the grace of mum, which often isn't grace, or it's ultimately by some court order. So free and open access is, in the initial stages of most separations, one of the major problem areas. And in fact, a lot of guys are in a situation of what we call parental alienation. There's deliberate attempts to prevent them making any contact with their children, and there becomes a continual battle in that circumstance.
Can we explore that then? Because again, one would hope and think that obviously both parents can see the need for both parents to be involved with their children, right? So I suppose, why is it then that the man seems to get cut off at times? Is it that the wife or the partner is just frustrated and agitated, and one way we can hurt the man is to limit the access? Is that primarily the main reason?
Look, I've been debating that over recent days, and it seems that they're trying to get the upper hand in a negotiation. They may not think it is a negotiation, but they think it's holding the levers in a power play. If they hold the children, they're likely to get more of what they want. And in some circumstances, it's outright trying to manipulate the best financial outcome in the situation. Yeah, that's a cynical view, but it seems that the mother generally claims ownership until it's proven to be in the best interest to share the parenting.
And in some cases, it's a practical thing too. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, sometimes, you have a couple, maybe the husband is the main provider, so his ability to maintain the children is much more troublesome. And so it makes sense for the wife to have custody of the kids, but that shouldn't limit access to the kids for the father or the husband. So it can be a real lever. And I think a lot of it is frustration. I think a lot of it is payback and so forth. It's a real situation because the kids, I mean, it's the key thing is, the kids should not hear the debates or the discussions or all those sort of things. They should still love their both parents. And so it's a real key issue.
Yeah.
It's totally logical looking at the situation from outside it, but when you're in it,
yeah,
unfortunately, it becomes a lever in a power play.
Yeah.
Rob, as far as then men who may find themselves at the end of that, and it's genuinely unfair, right? Because I mean, in some circumstances, perhaps it is warranted. We won't go there, but let's just say that they feel like there's an unfairness to that situation. What do they do, and what are their rights regarding that?
Well, in terms of the legal system, there are ways and means to actually create a scenario where an agreed parental plan is worked out between the two parties, and that becomes a court order. And there's parental plans are always broken, but at least it's a point of departure,
starting point,
something to work on.
Are they generally done with a mediator, Rob?
Yeah, it can also be done through the court system, but a mediator is the preferred way to go. And yeah, a lot of these parenting plans actually stay in place and they work for the benefit of both the mum and the dad and the children, but a lot of them, they're discarded, unfortunately, and they fall into situations of parental alienation. And I'd add too that I've heard women have contacted me and they describe parental alienation from the men's side also. Unbelievably, some guys just walk away from their families, don't want to have anything to do with their kids. Just so sad.
So guys who want to be invested into their children post separation, right? And let's say that there aren't at this stage any restrictions in that. There's a reasonable relationship with the ex. What are some important things to keep in mind then during those times, and obviously the interactions with the ex and picking up and dropping off of kids, those sorts of things?
Yeah, I've got a dad that is in a situation where he's got good relationships with his ex, but it still boils down to essentially being good at negotiating differences.
Yeah.
And this guy is particularly good at yielding to reasonable demands, and that works quite well. So a degree of flexibility, not doggedness, a bit of give and take, and just good negotiation skills generally win out if you've got a partner that is able to do so.
And that's your go ahead, Tim.
Sorry, Des. If a guy rings Parents Beyond Breakup, Rob, and this is a situation that they're going through, can you advise in that? Are you permitted to give advice around these sorts of things? Or would you say, hey, we can support you, but if you need advice and legal advice, you need to go to different...
Yeah, it's the latter. We would generally try and refer it to somebody that's expert in that area. And as I say, there are solicitors out there that have a heart for their clients, not just a heart for their pockets, and that they can do some great things.
And there's certainly plenty.
When it comes down to a breakdown, it needs to be either mediated or go through the court process.
Yeah, there are plenty of family counsellors around who, can deal with those sort of issues.
Yep.
It sort of leads to the next area of discussion, which is, excuse me, managing expectations, emotions, and actions. And I think this is a really key one in terms of the separation, in terms of, how do we set those expectations? How do we manage them once they're set in place? How do we deal with emotions? Because sometimes emotions are running riot, and actions can be strange too. So how do we manage that whole space?
Well, this is a model that I counsel and in business a lot on, and it was basically an expectation satisfaction model. And if you can imagine, you have on one scale expectations, and on the other side satisfaction, and in the middle what is available, i.e. whether it be service, whether it be negotiation. If you start on the left-hand side with really high expectations and you've only have a certain amount of deliverable, like the possibility of getting what you're likely to have is, say, in the middle, you're likely to come out dissatisfied because you had too higher expectations of what was possible in the scenario. And conversely, if you go in with really low expectations, you might get more than you expected, so you're immensely happy. But the real challenge is to be balanced, to work out what the likelihood is of the outcome that you're likely to expect.
Really good model.
But yeah, that's really the bottom line success of McDonald's. When you think about it, their product isn't outstanding, but you get the same product wherever you go around Australia. So the chances of being totally dissatisfied by McDonald's is fairly low because you know what you're going to get.
Set the expectations really low is not necessarily the right answer.
To say I'm never disappointed with a double M&M McFlurry with hot chocolate sauce, but that's a different story. Look, I think that is so true. I think the expectations, the emotions, actions, those sorts of things, and we've talked about exercise. That's been a great outlet. And as somebody who's been a gym junkie for over 30 years, I would be lying if I said that the exercise and the routine of getting to the gym hasn't been a place at times for me to get rid of frustration. I would be lying if that wasn't the case, but it's a safe place to go and burn off some stress and some frustration. We've talked about journaling before, which is great, and keeping a diary, keeping a point of key moments and things that have happened, and partly for recollection, but maybe legally as well. And like you said there, managing expectations is a really practical thing to do, and being aware of that. And I love the way that you just put that out there. That's such a simple, practical thing to do. We're going to wrap up in the few moments we've got left. There's a list of 10 rules of good etiquette for co-parenting, and we're going to quickly run through these. And the first is put children first. We've talked about that, and not use children as pawns, all those sorts of things. Be mindful of that because, these are our kids. Ask for help if needed. We've talked about that and the fact that men generally don't tend to want to do that, but we're encouraging you to do that. Let's just waylay on number 3 a little bit. No bad mouthing. And this was certainly something, particularly after my first marriage, we were very mindful of the kids not hearing us talk negatively about dad and trying to have that same respect back from him. But I suppose just speaking to that space, because obviously that then puts the kids, if we're going to put the children first, if we do that, that can put the kids in a really tricky space because they just want to love the parents equally, right? But they're hearing us say these negative things. So just expand on that for us, Rob.
Well, one of the things that's a common scenario, and there's arguments, verbal arguments, but what I counsel the dads is to come up with what's called the rock strategy. And you can't communicate with the rock. So if you're being baited or triggered in an argument, the best way is to go back and say, I'm sorry you feel that way. There's virtually no counter to that. And if you keep on holding that position, is that, okay, that's your point of view. I'm sorry you feel that way, but that's not reality. But leave it at that. You're not going to win every argument. It's about winning the long-term battle, not winning each argument.
Yeah, and it's also a case of not having any sort of those sort of discussions in front of the kids. You have those conversations in a separate room, or where the kids can't hear, or the kids aren't involved, because they shouldn't be subject to those sort of things. Yeah.
And in the modern world, SMSs are just so dangerous.
Yeah.
They can be intercepted by kids. I mean, that's horrible. But I counsel the guys not to SMS past 9 o'clock at night, and don't respond and have more than one response to each provocative SMS.
Yeah.
It's fruitless.
That's really, really good advice. As is the next one, which is biological parents make the rules, step parents uphold them. And I'd never heard that before, but it's actually really, really true and effective.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Number 5, don't be spiteful. Number 6, don't hold grudges. And number 7, use empathy when problem solving. Number 8, which sounds straightforward, but it's not. Be honest and straightforward. Into that, Rob, I mean, honesty is one thing. We can kind of get an understanding of that, but straightforward in a time of our lives when anything may seem far from being straightforward.
Yeah, I just call it the integrity test. I just say, you want to be a man of integrity. What would a man of integrity do in this situation? And sometimes some guys don't actually know what you're talking about. But once you explain what integrity is, they can see it. And that's what they try and do.
Yeah.
They try and distance themselves from the argy-bargy of argument, all the preceding ones. Being a man of integrity, won't be spiteful, won't hold grudges, won't badmouth. It's an aim.
Yes.
Hardly anybody can achieve it. It's an aim.
Easy to say, very difficult to do at times. That leads us into number 9, though, especially with the integrity. Respect each other's turfs. Just expand on that for us.
Well, unfortunately, when you're in a parental alienation scenario where a lot of these guys are, their turf is not being respected. So it's a matter of perseverance. And I've got one guy, and he has consciously taken a position that he believes that his estranged daughter will ultimately get back to him. He's being as patient as he can. He knows that he's not going to get short-term relationship back. And he knows that once she gets to 13, 14, there's a high chance that he'll get access to his daughter again. So patience is one of the things that helps some actually get through that process.
And I think that's a real powerful one for especially dads with daughters and with sons, but daughters, I guess, in particular, is that, the long term can be actually quite rosy, and kids ultimately see, if you show them respect and are honest and open about your dealings, the kids will see that and they'll respect that, and you will be able to rebuild that relationship over time. I think that's so important.
I think consistency is key in all of this, like you're saying, Des.
Exactly.
You stay consistent with your actions with your kids, whether it's that the truth comes out or they just see that you are being consistent with your love and your intentions towards them. They'll see that. Number 10 is, of course, an important one to wrap up on: compromise wherever possible. And man, there's been so much in the last couple of weeks. That was the separation checklist, by the way, that we've gone through this week from Parents Beyond Breakup. parentsbeyondbreakup.com is their website. Our special guest has been Rob Hoyle from Parents Beyond Breakup. Rob, there's been so much in the last couple of shows, and we thank you for helping us even discuss some of that, get some of that out, help us get some clarity around what you guys deal with, and hopefully as well, most importantly, help the men listening who might be going through something like this find some hope and some encouragement through what you do. Again, the website, parentsbeyondbreakup.com, the helpline 1300-853-437. And as we wrap up the show, momentumaustralia.org, our website, encourage you to check out last week's show as well. And again, if you need to have a confidential chat with someone, 1-800-000-636 is the number, 1-800-000-636. Des.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been wonderful having you, Rob. It's great to get that insight into this whole area of what you guys do with dads in distress. And so we thank you for that. Thank you for your time. And just remind guys who may want to lead a group, please get in touch with parentsbeyondbreakup.com and have a conversation and start the process of becoming a facilitator. That'd be really cool.
Yeah. And just a final word of encouragement, guys, as we've said before, a final word of encouragement, just please do not do this journey on your own. In fact, please do not do life on your own. We all on this call have done parts of our season on our own, and we can tell you life is much better when we're connected. So get connected, whether that's parentsbeyondbreakup.com, the helpline 1-300-853-437, or you want to reach out to us at momentumaustralia.org. Our heart is for you to get connected as we do life together. That's it for this week's show. We'll catch you next week right here on Momentum. Until then, you take care. God bless.
Thank you for watching this week's show, and we hope you subscribe to Momentum so you can find out what's happening in the shows in the future.
Absolutely. And keep an eye on our website too. That's momentumaustralia.org. There you'll find all of our shows and a whole heap of resources to help you on your journey. That is momentumaustralia.org.
Until next time, keep moving forward
with momentum.